I mentioned a creature called the Rougarou in my Honey Island Swamp Monster video. That was an alternate name for the Rougarou. I also said that the Honey Island Swamp Monster was spooky because of how close it was to where I live, but that was before I did research on the Rougarou and found out about sightings in the small town I live in and the surrounding areas. That's way scarier. The Rougarou is essentially Louisiana's bayou-dwelling werewolf. It is most often described as having a human body with the head of a wolf or a dog, with glowing red eyes and razor-sharp teeth. Variations also associated with animals such as pigs, cows, and chickens due to the fact that wolves are not often seen in the area. The Rougarou is often also associated with the skunk ape or the Honey Island swamp monster, likely due to another variation of the myth which states that the creature is a shapeshifter that can change forms between human and animal at will. Local stories say the Rougarou roams the streets at night, antagonizing people to attack. When the first drop of blood is drawn, they return to human form and tell the attacker who they really are. If this witness tells anyone about this encounter within a year and a day, they will become a Rougarou themselves. Other variations say a Rougarou can turn their victims merely by making eye contact. There are conflicting accounts of how to destroy a Rougarou. Some accounts say fire, while others suggest decapitation or even the complete mutilation of the creature's body to ensure that it cannot come back. The Rougarou has a varied and muddled history. One source I found claimed that the myth originated in medieval France, when belief in werewolves would have been far more prevalent. A version from the 16th century paints it as being seen as something similar to a genetic disorder, rather than the curse most other versions of the myth portray the Rougarou as being. In this version, the Rougarou would live life as a normal person until some event occurred that triggered their condition. Their body would then undergo a transformation and they would develop a craving for meat. Their full transformation into their Rougarou form would be completed once they had their first bite of human flesh. The story of the Rougarou supposedly changed once French immigrants came to live in the area which is now Louisiana. Across French Louisiana, it is a very common legend, and most Louisiana natives are very familiar with at least the name and basic concept of the Rougarou. The Rougarou is also thought to be nothing more than a boogeyman story to scare children or Catholics into obedience. Children are told by their elders to behave or else the Rougarou will get them. Catholics are told it will hunt them down and kill them if they don't obey Lent. And speaking of scaring Catholics, one French Catholic myth claims that in order for someone to turn into a werewolf, they must break Lent 7 years in a row. Honestly, this seems the most likely place for the Rougarou legend to have really started. Although the idea that the Rougarou is nothing more than a scare tactic is likely, there are more supernatural explanations for its origins that suggest many people believe in its existence as something more. The most common explanation involves witchcraft, wherein a witch has the ability to curse someone as a Rougarou. The unfortunate person is under the spell for 101 days. The curse is transferred when it draws another human's blood. There is also a Native American story of the Rougarou, which is spelled differently, as seen here. This version varies from being a Bigfoot legend to resembling something more like a Wendigo. There has been some dispute about whether or not this myth is actually related to the French Louisiana Rougarou legends. Despite the Rougarou legend seemingly beginning as a way to scare Catholics and children, many locals maintain its existence and have their own personal stories. A story in the Nicholsworth, a local college paper, recounts a story from a woman in the very town I live in. The woman's account goes as follows. There were 10 children in the family, and all of them were up crying that night. I didn't get up for some reason, but a year or so later one of the brothers killed himself. This boy was always veilling or hanging around with the other boys at night. One night he was walking home, he was always the last to leave, when he noticed a little white dog following him, snapping at his heels. He took out his pocket knife and cut the dog on its right foot. A loup-garou is a man who sells his soul to the devil and assumes the body of an animal. He can't be released until he is cut. The boy wasn't supposed to tell what had happened for a year and a day after he had seen the white dog turn into a man, but after it happened, he ran home and told his family. The next day, a prominent physician appeared in town with his right arm cut and in a sling. The dog resumes his human form in a day. I remember when the physician shot himself here. A year later, the boy killed himself and left a letter that the family turned over to the sheriff. Even today, he refuses to let anyone see it. In that same story, the author, Brandon False, heavily quotes from Patricia Perrin, a retired English instructor and folklore specialist. She describes the Rougarou as, quote, an important identification marker for South Louisiana's culture. Perrin's statement is quite obviously true due to the Rougarou's clear influence in some aspects of local culture. The Audubon Zoo in New Orleans has an exhibit dedicated to the Rougarou, which includes a statue of what the creature is said to look like. To me, there's actually something extra creepy about the fakeness of it. The New Orleans Pelicans, Louisiana's NBA team, were formerly known as the Hornets. When they were choosing the new name, one of the trademarks they filed was for the name the Rougarous. On the last Saturday in October in the city of Houma, Rougarou Fest is held. Jonathan Curall, who was involved in the Rougarou Fest, was also interviewed on the Destination America show Monsters and Mysteries in America about the Rougarou myth, which also marked the first time I've seen someone I've personally met talking about cryptids on TV. The Rougarou myth is even so prevalent that the term Rougarouing has become an adjective used to describe a person who stays up late or is active at night. Whether the Rougarou is truly a cryptid stalking the streets at night just waiting to pass its curse on to the next unfortunate soul, or whether it is merely a tool used to scare Catholics into keeping Lent, it is clear that the Rougarou has left its mark on Southern Louisiana.